What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo live. And we're like doing something really special today. I have a second time guest on the show, my good friend Greg Malazzi from the Cosmic Clock, and he had been trying to get out the Gene Roddenberry tapes from the Dr. Andrea Puharich, all the tapes that he recorded back then, and that's how the whole concept of the nine was known. But I didn't know before I started talking to Greg that Gene Roddenberry had recorded some of these tapes with Puharich, and there's a lot of lore that goes into that. And I want to talk to Greg a little bit about it. And he was kind enough, and this is like a first time ever, I think, to let us play the Gene Roddenberry tape without the moments of silence. And also, if you guys have a little time to do this, if you guys are on like a laptop or a desktop, Greg is also live streaming on his channel, and it would be really cool if you guys could just play both and mute one of them and enjoy the show. If you can do like multiple windows, that'd be really cool. Also subscribe to his channel. That'd be really cool. But it's a very special occasion, and I want to welcome to Psicoactivo for the second time, Mr. Greg Malazzi from the Cosmic Clock. How's it going, Greg? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to see you, as always.
Yeah, man. You've been doing quite a lot of great work over there, and I'm happy to say that you have like a little bit of an update on the Andrea Puharich documentary that you directed. What's the latest on that, if you can give us the latest?
Yeah, after a long wait, you can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. Okay. So after a long journey, the film will finally be coming out the end of this, mid to end of this summer. And the more exciting news is that a trailer is going to be dropping very soon, potentially the last week of this month or the first week of May. And so that trailer is going to come out, and I think people will finally get a glimpse at this almost 10 year in the making film. So that's the latest. Probably a safe bet would be probably more, May 1. So that's going to be dropping. So
nice.
Exciting. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. And how is the media rollout going to be? You're going to do a bunch of podcasts to promote the film as soon as the trailer drops, I would guess?
Yeah, we're doing, I've been on some shows that are going to come out, and probably some more as well. And we're doing a very similar release to, Age of Disclosure. The film is going to be available to rent or purchase on all the platforms.
Nice.
So that's going to be how it happens. Yeah.
Is it going to be a worldwide release?
Yes, worldwide. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so for all my peeps in Latin America and Australia and all the way over there, great news. I already saw the film. I already told you guys it's fantastic. Greg allowed me to see it, and that's why we did the interview a little while back. But hopefully enough people are in here already. Shout out to Justin. Shout out to Noble Cloud. Shout out to Dead Squatch. Everybody, welcome to this live show. And we're going to be doing a listening party of the Gene Roddenberry tapes. Gene Roddenberry, as you guys know, is a creator of Star Trek. I would like to ask Greg, how did you come about all of this material? If you could tell the story to people watching right now live.
Well, basically, again, like I said, this was probably 10 years ago or close to it, but I became very close. Well, at the time, I had just met him. Now I'm very close with him, Andy Puharich, who is the son of Andrea Puharich. In fact, his name is Andrea Puharich Jr., which is pretty cool. But I got to know him, and that's how the whole film started. And so one thing led to another, and he had mentioned the archive that he had of his father's, and that it was a huge amount of stuff. No one had really seen it or looked through it or done anything with it besides him. And he actually himself had not even really looked through a lot of it because it was so much stuff. You know, it's a huge undertaking to scan documents and listen to tapes and fix tapes. Some of them are broken. I mean, it's a crazy amount of stuff. So I, was able to very luckily get access to that material for the film. And that began this very long journey, as I've mentioned, of not only making the film, but sifting through decades. I mean, we're talking like the 50s through his mysterious death, as we know, in 1995. So many decades worth of stuff. And so it was just a huge job of digitizing, scanning, all that stuff. And so basically the Roddenberry thing was that I had heard through the grapevine, I don't even actually remember how I heard, but that there was this Roddenberry connection and that he had spent time with Puharich at his lab called Lab 9, which was his house in Ossining, New York. For people who don't know, that's probably 50 miles north of the city on the Hudson River. So it's not far, but it's a very, upscale area for people who remember that show Mad Men. The main character lived in Ossining, which is funny. So that was his lab up there. And Roddenberry, again, I'd heard some rumor or something online that Roddenberry had gone there and spent time there and sat in on these channeling sessions with Puharich and his group, which consisted of, a few people, notably Phyllis Schlemmer, this psychic he worked with for a long time, Sir John Whitmore, a British aristocrat who was really involved in the Lab 9 project. And so I'd heard this story that Roddenberry, of course, the creator of Star Trek, was there and many times. So I I came across a tape in the archives. There's many, many cassette tapes of a lot of channeling sessions. Basically, what that means is a tape recorder in the Faraday cage recording when Puharich would put a psychic into trance, and allegedly the 9 would come through the psychic, and what they were saying and speaking were the words of the 9 because their body would shut down and they wouldn't be in control of it and so forth. So sure enough, we found the tape, and it was shocking because I had just heard this as a rumor. I don't even remember if the tape was labeled, Roddenberry, because, we just had to listen to everything, so many tapes. And sure enough, there it was. You can clearly hear Puharich announce he's in the room. You can clearly hear his voice, which is obviously him. And it was pretty incredible to find that and know that this wasn't just a rumor and that it actually did happen. So that's how the long way of how I came across this Roddenberry stuff. And as you see in the other episodes I did, and I made a point in one of my videos about this because a lot of people say, he got ideas from Star Trek and so forth through these channeling sessions. And he very well did for Deep Space Nine, which came out, after the 70s. But pre 75, when a lot of the tapes were recorded with Roddenberry, he makes a mention that he had been in many sessions before this. So that's the only indication we have of, okay, maybe there's a possibility that he had done sessions before this particular one was recorded. We don't have those. Do they exist? Maybe. I'm not sure. But that he does mention, I can't remember. I guess we'll hear it, but he says some mention like, I've been here many times before. So
you also talked to someone on your channel about this script.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the story about the script before we play this for people? Because I think that's an important part of the story too.
Yeah, basically in 70, let's see, it would have been 74, 75. There was a guy named John Pavel, and he is a screenwriter. And in fact, he's pretty well known because he did, let me see if I can look this up quick. He did that movie Total Recall with
Yeah,
Arnold
with
Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote that. So he's a pretty, known screenwriter, but
Yeah.
he was really close with Roddenberry early on, like early 70s, I think 74, he said 75. So when what happened was Roddenberry, as we now know, did in fact go to Lab 9. He had sessions there and was so moved by his sessions there, and I think influenced by Puharich and the group at Lab 9 to write a script. And I think the story too is that at the time Roddenberry was a little out of work, so to speak. He was kind of in between projects, trying to get something going. He had something that fell apart, so he was looking for a new idea, a new movie. And he was so moved by his time in Ossining that he thought, hey, this is a great idea for my next movie. So he hires this guy, John Pavel, who I interviewed on my channel, which is up there. And it's very, very interesting because basically the script is a sort of firsthand account of Roddenberry's time at the lab with them. And he kind of changes his name, and they change the name of the characters, but it's Puharich, it's Phyllis Schlemmer and others. And it's really, really interesting. And so he wrote the whole script with Gene. He rewrote it a couple times. And I think all I can really say, for legal reasons, because obviously the film was never made or else we would see it, but all I can really say is that there was an issue with some estate stuff, and the film was never able to get made, but it could still happen. And let's just
What do you mean?
Well, let's just say there's ways for this to still happen if certain legal things were to flatten out.
Okay.
This could still be produced. So the script is just sitting there, and
Damn.
I have it. I've read it. Again, I want to honor John and not get into it too much because there was something that happened, and nothing bad, kind of typical Hollywood estate kind of stuff, and it kind of stalled. But he really is passionate about it. And what's a really interesting, and I made a post about this when I put out that article, but there's that movie called is it Communion, the movie?
Yeah,
I
with
believe is,
Christopher
yeah,
Walken, and it's Whitley Strieber's story,
yes,
right?
yep. So the director, pardon me, of that movie, whose name is Philippe Mora. It's a very popular director at the time. He did Communion. He was attached to direct this 9 movie, so much so that he had gotten Hans Zimmer involved, because they usually attach all these people, actors, and then they try to make the movie. So that guy at one point was attached to direct this movie. It was published in a trade magazine, like it was really happening, and it seemed like it was going to, and
Damn.
never did. So
Damn.
so there's maybe through our community and people out there's a way to make it happen.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I mean, there
Yeah.
are a couple of people who are like very into the topic and have a lot of money. Like, good example would be, for example, Matt Bell from the Matt Bell podcast. That dude is funding expeditions inside of the pyramids right now with his money. So
Wow.
he's like into all of that stuff. Maybe approaching him would not be a bad idea.
Well,
There's also this.
as it always is with these kinds of things, it really does come down to that. But
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, maybe you'd have to find somebody like Tom Hanks to play Gene Roddenberry, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean,
Yeah.
and Tom Hanks, I would bet he would be attracted to something like that too. Of course, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, you know,
it's
what's
key.
interesting tidbit is I got in touch with, not directly, but with Roddenberry, who's Gene's son. And I was really honest with them. I said, hey, I have something that I believe is of historical importance. This tape of Gene Roddenberry, creator of Star Trek, in this real psychic channeling session. And I even sent them a little excerpt, but for whatever reason, they like weren't interested, and they were just sort of
Yeah,
like, "Thanks for sharing," good luck or that, and that they didn't really
yeah.
seem interested. So I
I
don't know.
think Jeremy Corbell is good friends with that guy that
Yeah,
you just mentioned.
I heard that
Um,
about that too. Yeah,
yeah, maybe we can ask Jeremy.
yeah,
But yeah. Okay,
yeah,
so let's play it if that's okay with you. Let me
yeah.
explain the mechanism that we're going to use for everybody
Okay.
who just got here. You were just on the night shift with Clint. I think he may have just ended his live stream. So, welcome everybody. What we're doing is a listening party of the Gene Roddenberry tapes. We're going to be active on the comment section, but we're going to mute ourselves so we can listen to the whole thing. It's I think 40 minutes long or something like that, is it?
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes.
Okay, cool. So we're about to start. We're gonna play it for you guys, and we're gonna mute ourselves. See you guys in the comments. All right. All
All
right.
right.
Let's do this.
Yeah, go ahead. To assure the nine that I come here tonight in a totally positive way, in the same way as you will recall, I entered the other communications by having meditation first. But however, to provide the kind of drama necessary in our motion picture story, our writer must ask the questions that will exist in the mass audience mind that comes to our motion picture.
Yes.
And although this audience does not reject the possibility of extraterrestrial life and landings by other life forms, neither will they accept it without some very hard questions being answered for them, I'm sure you know. And neither will they identify with the main character in the story unless he asks such questions. So, and they require nuts and bolts answers. Traditionally, is my experience in this, that they need to know a lot of who's and where's and how's and why's.
We will attempt within that of the realms of possibleness. Yes.
Then let me ask the first one that they would be asking, to whom am I talking? Do you have a name?
I am of Tom. That I am of the spokesman for that of the nine. That in truth is that of Tahuti. Yes.
Are
Will you
you?
explain to that of Jonathan?
Yes, we'll explain later.
Are you one of the nine, or are you a separate being?
I must have of consultation for that of permission. I am that of the spokesman for that of the nine, and I sit in that of the council of nine. Yes.
May I ask, will you be among that group which will visit Earth among the landings?
That of the nine will not be in that of the essence of that of the landing. That will be of the civilizations of Eltia, of Joseph of Aragon, that of Huva in primariness in conjunction with that of Eltia.
I think the next question that they will ask, and I've heard some tapes on it, but I would like to ask again, where are you? Do you exist in another dimension or time?
We come from that of what you would call of the zone of cold. We come from that of a time that has not of the relationship to that of your time. We are not in physical as you are in physical, or that of Altea, or as that of Huva are in physical, not in the same manner in which you are, but in that of a also of physicalness. We have not that of the physicalness. If it need, we may have of a manifestation, but we are of pure energy. Yes. Our doctor, will you explain to that of Jonathan? You have of that of our permission for that of the recordings from where we are.
Yes.
Doctor, the only thing that confuses me, or that I think I need to know after hearing the tapes, is I understand that the 9 are not physical entities. Do I understand that those of Huva and Altea and others are physical beings?
They are that of physical civilizations, but not in that of the dimension of that of the planet Earth. They also have of physical limitations, but not to the extent of that of the planet Earth.
Could you just simply amplify that statement and indicate to Jonathan which dimension, for example, does the Huva exist in?
When you speak of that of dimensions,
We call that 4th, 5th, 6th. For example, we live in a 4-dimensional world, our physical world.
I will have of a consultation with that of the council and with that of Huva and of Eltia, of the understanding of that of the different, as you would call of them dimensions, our doctor, but in truth they are not that of dimensions.
Well, as Spectre and Huva explained it to me, dimensions consist of various velocity envelopes.
Yes. That of the speed.
Right. And relative to the speed of light, where is the speed of Huva? Is it the power of it? Is it an order of magnitude? Could you give us some idea?
I will have that is of Eltia. Eltia is giving to that of us, of that of his numbers. Yes. In that to the relationship of that of the planet Earth, that of the... Yes, Eltia has said it is not of dimension, but it would be 56 of the times of that of the speed of the Earth, in that of your radiation of light.
Yes, we understand that. In essence, 56 times the velocity of light.
I understand. Thank you. Since the civilizations you represent come from other dimensions, what about the rest of our galaxy and universe? Are any of the visitors to come from there, or do civilizations within our own space and time dimension, will they play a part in this landing?
When you speak of civilizations within that of your time and space, you are speaking within that of your galaxy.
Yes, that is correct.
There are of those within that of your galaxy that are not within that of what you call of the dimension of your Earth, but those that will come to benefit that of the planet Earth come from that of galaxies not within that of your galaxy. That of Eltia, as that of an example, is what you would call of 50 of your million of years away. Yes.
Are there any civilizations or races within our galaxy visiting us at present?
Yes. Not of those that are, how may we explain to that of you? There are, we will attempt. That of the planet Earth you will visualize within this of your mind is on that As an example, you will see of a triangle. That of the planet Earth would be on that of the line, on that of a bottom of a triangle, if that point of a triangle was in an upright position. Do you understand?
Yes.
You will visualize that of the Earth is in the center of that of the bottom of the connection of the triangle. In those of the lines that would generate upward to that of the top of the triangle, you will visualize that there would be such of a thing as an indentation or a notch, or of some that would give of identification, that there would be of a difference than that of a straight line. Do you understand of that?
I think I do.
Then you will visualize that underneath, and as it goes upward, that there are those of civilizations of different dimensions, of different intelligence, of different evolving, that are working with those of the civilizations that we would say are of more intelligence or of more service. It is not of necessity that they are of better than those of the civilizations in lowerness. It is just that of our attempt to explain to that of you. There are of different civilizations in service to those of the 24 civilizations. There are those within that of the galaxy of the planet Earth that are in service to those that are attempting to salvage of that of the planet Earth. But they will not be of the primaries. Yes.
May I ask, if those who will visit Earth in the landings, the Altians, the Huvans, and others, will they visit Earth in the same physical body as they have in their own dimension?
Those of Altea have, in the manifestation upon that of the earth, a similar appearance to that of those that exist upon that of the planet Earth. It is of a higher rate of vibration, but they may bring of it into that of the rate of vibration for that of the planet Earth. There are others, such as that of the civilization of Ashan, which does not have of the appearance of that of the physical planet Earth, of those the people upon of it. There will be a gradual, how may we say, those that will appear in the beginning will have the appearance in similarities to those of the planet Earth, or will manifest in that of the manners, such as that of Huva. Those of the other civilizations that will follow will come within that of the form of which they are. Yes. We wish to reassure of you that those that exist upon that of the planet Earth will find that those that do not have, you use of terms of beauty, will find that there is within of them the essence of beauty. Yes.
I'd like to...
There will be of many appearances.
Thank you.
Of diversifications of appearances, yes.
Thank you for that. I'd like to ask a few questions later on it. What I'd like to ask now, and I think will be necessary for the audience understanding, is do I understand correctly that civilizations represented by the 9 have visited Earth in humanity's distant historical past?
Yes, in many of times.
And it is also my understanding that some of them remained on planet Earth, mingling or interbreeding with the humans here?
There were of civilizations that colonized that of the planet Earth, those of the original beings that evolved into that of the planet Earth were what you would call that of the black race.
Do I understand then that the other races than the black are the results of minglings between the black and people of and life forms of your civilizations?
No, that of those of the black are that of the original upon that of the planet Earth. Those that are of the Oriental, those that are of the white, those that are of what you call of the red, are those that have been, how may we say, colonized, have been of other civilizations, yes.
Are they the results of breeding on Earth, or were they brought to Earth?
They are of the result of breeding upon that of the planet Earth.
A question that I must ask for my audience is, does this, since the whites and reds and yellows represent the breeding of advanced civilizations, does this mean that the black is inferior to other races, or are they merely different? And can you explain what the difference is?
That of the black is not of that of an inferior race upon that of the planet Earth. Those that were colonized from other of civilizations to that of the planet Earth, and that of our doctor had of that of the portion of involvement. It was of an attempt, how may we say, before that of 32 of your thousands of years ago, there were those of seeds that were placed upon that of the planet Earth. Then in 32,000, and that of the seed evolved unto that of a being. Then of 32,000 years ago, those of the other civilizations with that of our doctor came to this of this planet to breed from other civilizations with those of the seeds. Those of the black evolved from this of the planet. It was, how may we say, to that of you, it was such as that of a laboratory, to see if that of those of the planet Earth, those of the original that were not seeded, in which manner they would evolve in comparison to with those that were colonized. But those that were colonized after a period of time, because they came from other civilizations that had perhaps of more technology or of more intelligence, began to feel that they were of superior to that of the black. They are of the reason that they have kept that of the blacks and not of evolving. That was planned for that of the planet Earth did not come to pass. That of the planet Earth, upon after of the seeding, it was of discovered by those of the civilizations that of all of the planets in the universe, it is only of the planet that has of the beauty, of the diversification, of the changes, than any of the other planets in the universe. It was also discovered that those that existed upon that of the planet Earth had of great physicalness that was not witnessed on that of other planets, and they began to live in that of the desire and of the physicalness and in of the recycling of that of the planet Earth. As they had of the recycling, they began to hold that of the originals of that of the planet Earth in bondage. Yes.
Yes, I understand the bondage of the whites, of the blacks. Thank you. I am a little confused as to where the physicalness came from. The
That
people
of the
came.
gravity, that of the density of that of the planet Earth, and that in which it exists, and in that of the seasons, that of the senses upon which you have of feeling on that of the planet Earth, exist not in other planets. And those of the souls began to feel that they had of a substance that they did not feel in that of other planets. It is of a planet how may we say, I will have of a consultation for finding of proper wordness in your language. Yes. And that of your forms of breeding.
Yes.
That in the beginning was that of a form for that of breeding. And also it was given to have that of the sensations within that of the physical body, such as that as you would see, that you would taste, that you would feel. But it began through that of years of becoming of a primariness and the beginning for control. That form does not exist on other of civilizations or of other of planets. Then when that of the civilization of Eltia, which was in that of over of your 11,000 years ago, I am sorry, they say I am in error. It was of over of your 13,000 years ago, and that in which they had involved of themselves, in that of the medicinal and of the surgery, and in attempting to do of transplants. This also heightened within that of the subconscious and in of the minds of those of the souls that recycled upon that of the planet Earth. That, how may we say to you, of a desire. It is not in existence in that of the other planets. It is therefore of great importance that this of the planet Earth become into balance. There is not objection into that of the universe, for that of the method of breeding, for that was of a decision, that this was of the way, that this of the planet Earth would repopulate of itself. What was of the objection is that it became of that of the source of all primariness, and that it became that of control of all of the souls. For if you look upon all of that exists upon this of the planet Earth, it is of the one source that creates of all the difficulty, is it not?
Yes, I understand.
From that goes in to that of greed, and into that of material. But that of greed and material comes for only of one nature of things. It comes only for bringing to that one that you have a desire for to you, or to give to that one all that they have of desire for. Yes.
I'll pass quickly over that then with one final question. I gather from what you said that you have sent representatives to other planets in our galaxy, but that this was one planet in which the single planet in which you had this kind of difficulty.
Yes. This is of the only planet that has created of a bottleneck. Those are the souls that exist upon this of the planet Earth, and that of their recycling of reincarnations refuse to leave that of the planet Earth. Each of the planets in which they exist upon, or which they have of that of a birth, is for some form of teaching of them, but they are so indesirous of this of the physical planet Earth that they do not further of themselves. Yes.
Thank you. There is a primary question that I'm sure these others here have asked, and let me respectfully ask it again. Since I gather from other tapes that you can influence things here on Earth, you have made dolphins appear, you have implanted various of our people. Obviously you can create signs if necessary, and I wonder if you plan to create any sign for me in the work on my script.
That is, we will explain. It is not of us that create of the signs. It is that of the civilizations of Eltia and of Huva, since they are, particularly that of Huva, that of the planet Earth is of its concern, and that of its brother planet of Eltia, which in, how may we say, is in guardianship to that of Huva. We will ask of them, yes. that of Eltia, yes, and that of Huva, but particularly that of the civilization of Ashan. Yes, will be involved in giving to that of you the nature of signs of which you have of need. There will be upon that of the area in which you are involved, in that of the writing, upon that of the place of resident of where you live. That of areas, and that I will have for positiveness to convey to you. Yes. Shan has informed of us that they will give to that within that of your hand, within that of your mind, within that of your recorder, that of information which will flow from that of them to you. It will be that of the part that will give to you that of the creativity, in that upon which they have of the appearance. That of Huva has said, there will be of the movement of objects within that of your area, for you to be in alertness. That of Eltia has said, be aware of the lights. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. There's a question that I cannot avoid asking, or my audience cannot avoid asking, and that is the question of signs to Earth of your landings. Since these other things are possible to you, the audience must ask my writer character why you do not give strong and definite signs of your coming, rather than approaching it through in a rather what we would call a second-hand manner, through a motion picture and other ways. Obviously, you have your reasons, and I think I must talk about them in the movie.
It is of great importance, Jonathan, for you to understand that if that of the civilization of Eltia, and that of the civilization of Huva, and of those other civilizations, would come in mass and attempt to teach of those of the people, those of your governments of this of your world of earth, have refused to believe, or have refused to convey to that of the people of that of the existence. If there would be an attempt of those civilizations to land upon that of the planet Earth, in that of a mass situation, which in truth will come to pass in that of the time, those of the people upon that of the planet Earth would be in that of a state of panic, for they have not of the understanding, they have not of the knowledge that we would mean not of harm to them. Remember of this, there are also those of civilizations that would have a great desire of controlling of that of the planet Earth, to keep of those of the souls that exist in that of bondage. And those of those civilizations at times have landed upon that of the planet Earth and have created of the nature of difficulty for some that of the beings. It is important that there not be that of a panic within that of those that exist upon the planet Earth, but that knowledge be brought to them in that of a gentleness, that those of the civilizations mean not of harm to them. It is of great importance, for they may then attempt to not only remove of their own life, but of those of the lives of their families and those that exist around of them, and it would not serve of the purpose. Those of the governments of the world have refused to accept that there are of others of a higher intelligence, and in truth of that of a more spiritual intelligence than those that exist upon the planet Earth. There will be on that of your television transmission communication systems a gradualness to convey to the people that there is that nature of others that mean of them of not harm, but have of an interest to save of that of the planet Earth. For in truth, if there is not of the nature of those from other civilizations to help of that of the planet Earth, it will be of a destruction of itself. We do not come to control. We do not come to hold in bondage. We will come with love and with patience and with understanding. But since there is the denial of our existence, then how can those that exist upon that of the planet Earth accept the fact that those are the civilizations of Eltia, of Huva, of Ashan, and of the rest of the 24 mean of them well? Yes.
Yes, I understand what you say, and as I'm sure you know, I've written many scripts speaking of such difficulties.
That was of your predestined free will to bring to that to you of this of the point upon where you are. And for that we are grateful. You have followed, as you would call of it, that of your script. Yes.
And now, in this case, it seems to me that in the writing of my script, which I agree is a subtle way to plant the thought of landings, of benign landings in the hearts and minds of people, if there were something that could be discussed in the script, some sign in the sky or elsewhere that could be predicted in the script, I think it would better prepare the people to believe that there will be benign landings.
I will have of a consultation.
Whoa. Okay, dude, that was
That's
pretty
it.
crazy. All right.
I took some notes myself, actually, of some interesting things.
Yeah, I do want to talk about some of those because so there's something that I've been thinking about since I started doing this. You know, you start imagining what could the thing be, right? What could reality be really? And this whole racist thing, it's really strange. I always wondered if it was possible that Earth was some sort of haven for different races who have arrived at different times in history, and not all of them are from here, you know, and that may be a reason why um, there's so much like difference in the world and like disagreements and all that. But that's just me just spitballing a little bit and thinking about it. And when I heard that about the black race being like the original one from Earth, as according to the Nine, I thought about that. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting because if you're familiar with Zechariah Sitchin,
Yes, I am. Yeah.
He, as a matter of fact, it wasn't even planned, but I just had one of his books sitting near me. But that was like, he talked a lot about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This idea that, you know, we're sort of seeded from another civilization, Earth. Everyone on Earth was seeded, and yeah, I mean, that's obviously a pretty big question to get into and think about. But yeah, I did pick up on those comments they made, and I should look back at that Sitchin stuff because, as far as I remember, he is known as one of the first people who wrote about that, and that this 9 tape could potentially predate, I think, when his first book came out. In fact, I guess I could probably find that out.
Yeah,
pretty
we're
easily.
we're just hanging out here, like no worries. That's how the live stream works. It's like there's no need to have like a sense of urgency, or we're just hanging out. There's a lot of comments. Thank you to everyone for commenting. There will come a time in this conversation when I'm gonna pass the ball to everybody commenting. If you have any questions, I will tell you when the questions section starts, but I'll be singling out a few questions that I've already seen. So you can ask Greg whatever you want about the film that he's putting out, about his work at the Cosmic Clock, about these tapes. I do want to ask you one thing though. Well, many, but I've been meaning to ask you publicly about this. Have you checked out everything that is in this collection? Like, is there anything that you've seen out of everything you've checked out that you go like, whoa, that seems like it's gonna be interesting?
Yes, and that's all the stuff that's going to be in the film.
Oh,
I guess is the best way to put it. But so yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff, quite honestly, would be. I wouldn't want to talk about it just because there's the major stuff and the sort of, I guess you would call predictions and things like that are things that we are featuring in the film. But I mean, like I said earlier, there's so much of this. I mean, there's probably, which not an exaggeration, like hundreds of hours of stuff like this. And I think, you know, if you listen to what we just heard with Roddenberry, a lot of people I kind of chalk that up to sort of typical new age, like channeling lingo. And a lot of it feels that way. And a lot of it is sort of the nine giving advice and sort of guidance and things like that. As you can see, you know, Roddenberry's asking questions about his script and what should I do and how should I present this in my script. So a lot of it, I think, I know it was people who were going to these sessions because they wanted guidance and they thought, okay, I'm going to be talking to this, you know, entity, this group of entities. I'm going to get information and guidance from them. But a lot of the tapes aren't like that, and a lot of them are, again, sort of predictions, I guess you could say, or warnings. I know that's kind of a big part of this sort of channeling culture, is the idea that people are getting warnings about certain things that may happen, not to them personally, but to the earth. Some of that stuff in the Puharich sessions happened. Again, this is stuff that's going to be in the film, but it was more immediate things that were happening at that time, specifically the Middle East war that was going on in the mid to late 70s. There was a lot of warnings about things that would happen and specific people, specific generals in the Middle East and in the United States. And it's very strange because that gets into the idea of, is this hoaxed? Is this being made up? And if it is, how would these people know the name of this person? Or how would they, you know, this is the 70s, right? They would have had to read a whole newspaper before going into the session and had the news of that day, you know, quickly in their head, and then they're spewing it out and it's made up. And that's the stuff to me that just seems very unlikely because, again, Phyllis, the woman who's on this Roddenberry tape, she was, you know, a middle-aged woman at the time. But of course, a lot of these sessions, people know about the Space Kids, and a lot of these sessions were coming through the Space Kids, who, again, people say kids and they get this image of, you know, this young little kid. They were, you know,
young adults, right?
Yeah,
Basically.
20s, some 30s. I'd say generally mid 20s to early 30 range, but, you know, not necessarily people, with all due respect, who would have the knowledge of global politics and geopolitical situations, you know, in their head at all times. In fact, I doubt they would even know much of anything that was going on. Again, it's not like now where you look at your phone, you're glued to X, YouTube, you're seeing everything instantly. Like they would have had to watch TV or read the newspaper basically and get the information. So the point is, there's a lot of stuff that, like, your question was, you know, was anything sort of shocking, and yeah, there was a lot of stuff because, again, it's like, how would they have known a certain name of a person, a certain situation, the timing, you know, and the other weird thing too is allegedly, because I wasn't there, of course, and none of us were, but a lot of times apparently these sessions, like the channel that he would call them, the channel, which is the person doing the channeling, they would just be like hit with a sign or a signal that like they would have to say something and it would have to happen now, and they would sort of rush into the Faraday cage and hit record. And there's a lot of sessions like that, and it's really cool because on the cassette tapes you can hear the lead up, and you can tell that there's a lot of shuffling around and kind of like quickly getting ready. And it's interesting because apparently they're being told, now you have to relay this message immediately, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's just so much complexity involved if it were this sort of long standing fake thing. It's just, I just find it very difficult to believe that all of this stuff was just sort of made up. And of course skeptical people have that view, and sure, I mean I'm sure there's parts of it that could have been, but there's so much going on and with so many people involved that it would just be, I think, kind of hard to do that. So
to fake it. What do you think about the whole Don Elkins channeling stuff? Because like today, for example, we have this guy Daryl Anka, whose name is Bashar, right? And he does these clicking sounds, and he claims to that this Bashar alien talks through him and all that. What's the difference between what Buharich was doing and, for example, the Don Elkins stuff and what we see with Bashar today, do you think?
Well, just to put it out there now, I don't really follow Bashar. I mean, not that I'm sure he's like a cool guy, but I don't really know a lot about him or what he
me
does.
neither, though. I found out about him from the trailer, though.
No, I mean, so I can't really comment on that, but so for what I know, and this is what's interesting, I think people probably know this, but Don Elkins was part of Puharich's group in the mid-70s, and there's a lot of pictures of him at Puharich's estate in Ossining, and he was part of this larger group of people who were all sort of kind of like a, people think it's like a cult or whatever, but it wasn't. It was just, people were living there. They're all involved in the work, and they're all very interested in pursuing this work. And Don Elkins is one of them. And we're talking, mid-70s. And if you're aware of the Raw Material and the Law of One, that book came out in 81, I think. So we're talking, several years after. And so what's interesting is that Ra, which of course is an Egyptian god, that is an entity that allegedly was coming through some of these channeling sessions, going back to the 50s as well, when Puharich started all this. But so there is that connection where the Ra entity appears both in Puharich's work and then of course in the Raw Material stuff. But Elkins and him were very close collaborators. Elkins traveled with Puharich. There's a bunch of photos actually of our mutual interests of Pachita. There's photos of Don Elkins going to Mexico with that group of people at the time, which is pretty interesting.
So you probably met Pachita too, right?
Yeah, I would assume. I'd assume so. There's a collection of photos of a trip. I think it was 77, and he was part of that group who went with him. So yeah, they were connected. And I guess to answer your question, the similarities, it's the same kind of channeled content. I mean, I'd have to kind of touch up on the Raw Material stuff. I mean, I obviously know it, but it's been a long time. But it's just interesting that Elkins was so closely linked to Puharich, and then several years later apparently gets this connection to this raw entity, and then brings through, you know, several books worth of material. And
Yeah.
even Carla Ruckert, the woman who was the channeler in the raw material stuff, she was close to Buharich. She was an assistant of his at one time. And, you know, I know there's all this stuff online about how all of that was linked to MK Ultra and mind control. I don't particularly see anything that makes me feel that that was the case. I know there's that guy out there has a pretty big channel who talks a lot about this, Brett Stone or something.
I haven't seen
Yeah.
him.
But anyways, people think, you know, Buharich is orchestrating some mind control thing with all these people, and it was all connected. But it just, again, is something that could be, but seems very, I don't see what the end result would have been of that if that were the case. So,
Question about that. What about what happened in England in that TV show? You did a video on that, but could you explain people how
Yeah.
Buharich may have been linked to that or not?
yeah, so I did a video, you can see it on the channel, about this sort of famous incident that happened in 1977 in England. A TV station was overtaken, and this voice came through that was allegedly this extraterrestrial that was trying to communicate through the airwaves. And the connection, as you'll see in the video, is basically in a lot of these channeling sessions, there's mention. I mean, you even hear it in the Roddenberry that we just listened to. At one point, they mention, you know, we'll be coming through television communications. So there's a lot of mentions of this on a lot of these different tapes of we're going to communicate through airways, we're going to communicate through electronics, which is interesting because of the Chris Ramsey video he did on the pilot who received the messages through the...
That happened in Acapulco, Mexico.
Yeah.
And the pilot, and there's the tape on Eyes on Cinema. If you want the raw tape, is on Eyes on Cinema, one of my favorite YouTube channels on the topic. Yeah. And this guy is allegedly, he took a plane and mid-flight, he started communicating, or beings started communicating through him, through the radio to the control tower. And that was really wild. Like, and that happened in the 70s. So yeah, it's much harder to fake something like that with technology back in the 70s than it is today. It's probably pretty easy to do today, right?
Yeah, of course. And that's interesting because there's a lot of mention of coming through electronics. So that would have been an example of that. And so the connection to Buharich is there's a lot of mentions of it. And on top of that, he was in England at the time that this occurred. And I know this because he kept meticulous journals, and he mentioned in one of his journals that lines up pretty much exactly with the date of that incident, which I believe was somewhere in late November 77. He was there in England, and his partner, John Whitmore, who was involved with a lot of his work at that time, was also there. So there's no, I mean, and again, in the video, you'll see I'm not making any direct connection or claiming anything, but it's just interesting that they do all these sessions. They claim they're going to come through. They're in England at the time. It's very, very strange. And I think I've heard that this was quote unquote debunked and people had come out and admitted they did it. But if you really dig into that story, which, we don't have to get into here, but I don't think it actually was ever truly debunked. Like, I believe it's still sort of an open question of like what exactly happened. So
yeah. Also, just for people who, because a bunch of cases have had that happen, like people come forward and say, I was lying, I was portraying something. And two of the most famous cases recently came out to say that it was fake. I'm not saying it isn't, but just remember, everybody has a price. And if somebody's going through a rough time and is part of one of these stories, they can very easily get paid for just to say the opposite. If they're going through a rough time, somebody with a lot of money can just go, approach them and go, hey, you know, and I'm not saying it's happening, you know, but it's human nature. Like, and a lot of these people have not become famous or have not gotten any money out of telling their stories. They just
Yeah.
wanted to get it out, you know, and unfortunately, we live in a materialistic paradigm, and everybody needs to coexist and to have means. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to remind people that because we are very easy to judge and to just go like, that's bullshit. Oh, of course it happened that way, you know, but we don't really know what's going on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think didn't that happen recently with this guy who had made some claim about being privy to the whole Trump UFO disclosure speech?
Yes, this recently happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, yeah, that was rough to see, actually. Mark Christopher Lee's his name. He recently came out to mention another name as a source. And it was just that, you know, if he was already not being truthful in one thing, it's really hard to believe anybody who's like lied the first time and everybody caught him, you know, like
Yeah.
very difficult.
Totally.
About this these communications, I wanted to ask you, what do you think the end goal is, or and what do you think those entities, if they do exist, might be? Just curious. Are you an experiencer? Have you ever seen a UFO or something like that along those lines? No, just
No.
really curious, like me.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
never seen a
no,
UFO either.
No, I never have. I know very trustworthy, normal people who have, but no, I never have. No.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird because I think, of course, you can jump on all this stuff and say, well, where are they now? Or there's this terrible war going on in Palestine and Iran and all this stuff. So what's going on? Why aren't they here? Why aren't they helping? And you know, it's a legitimate question to ask. I think they do mention. This isn't my theory per se, but they do mention this idea that I think comes up a lot in this kind of topic is like they're sort of checking in on you know, this planet every so often. It's like we're not that significant or we're not that important. We're just potentially one of many different civilizations out there that they are sort of checking in on. And so maybe they weren't around when this was happening. I mean, I don't know. But obviously that's a very easy way for, you know, a skeptical person to kind of dismiss it. You could say the same thing about most religions. I mean, where was, you know, any sort of religious figure to stop this stuff as well? But I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the messages are always pretty positive and sort of uplifting. And if anything, I mean, can't we just look at them as that and sort of be moved or be inspired by something that they said, whether it's real or whether because from what I understand, I mean, there's a massive following of people as far as the Law of One and the Raw Material books who really, like, it's almost like a movement or a religion in and of itself. And, you know, if that's all it is, then what's so wrong with that? You know?
Yeah.
That's kind of my take, because it's just so, I mean, you know, again, I've spent 10 years almost, like, and I still feel like every so often I'm just like, wait a second, what the hell is going on here? You know, like, it's just so, I guess what I always go back to is just the amount of time and energy and money and all of this stuff that Buharich and these people put into this at the time, and to just think that it was all for nothing, or just it was all this inside joke they had for all these years, and they knew it. I just have to think that there was something going on that made them want to do this, want to continue. The most interesting point to me was I did an interview with him on a podcast, and it was this guy Stuart Holroyd, and he was a British author who wrote a book called Briefings for the Landing on Planet Earth. And it's one of these books now where you find it on eBay for like $200. It's really rare. I have an original copy, but he spent time with the Lab 9 group in Ossining and wrote kind of like a fly on the wall book about his experience there. And the whole premise really of this book is he's this fly on the wall, very outsider, pretty skeptical guy. And he's going into this setting. And they even said, look, we don't want to influence you. We want you to just take this all in, write what you want. We're not going to edit this at all. And people can read the book. I'm pretty sure there's like a PDF of it out there. But the point is, his takeaway from all this time he spent with them was like, I don't know what it is, but something is definitely going on that I can't really explain. And it is definitely not that this is just somebody who's like stream of consciousness making something up, like something strange is going on. And I guess I'll never know what it is, but it's paranormal. It's not normal. And that was his takeaway. And I interviewed him. Unfortunately, he passed away like a few years ago. He was much older, but I interviewed him a few years ago, and to that day, he still kind of kept that mindset, and that's how he felt. So to me, that meant a lot, because he was somebody who was very, again, skeptical, very outside of a lot of this stuff, and then that was his takeaway. So, I don't know.
If there was ever like a time in recent history, recent decades, when there was probably contact of some sorts, if any of this is real, it was probably during the 70s, because there's a lot of things that happened then. It wasn't just tapes that Harch was recording. Like there was the Colares incident in Brazil. There was the California mass sightings that happened in Southern California. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, it seems as though, like, especially weirdly in like 76, 77, 78, like so much stuff was happening. Not just, in his life, but around the world. I mean, close encounters, of course, and different things. It just seemed like a very specific little stretch there in the late 70s where just so much stuff like this was going on. And I'm trying, I mean, I've told you, but I'm trying to do a better job at figuring out how to catalog and kind of put out a lot of these 9 recordings, because obviously I have hundreds of hours of them, and it's not an easy or quick task. I mean, now with AI, of course, you can transcribe stuff, but still, it's just a pretty big task. But I
may know a guy. He's in the comments right now. We'll talk about it after.
Yes. So I just think like it'd be really interesting to put together a sort of catalog of all this stuff and kind of look at it and see, are there any correlations to something happening today? Did any of these sort of predictions happen? And, is there any connection to what's happening now? Because I've listened to so many, but again, you can go kind of nutty listening because it's just so much information, so much stuff. But I am trying to actively do that, and maybe that could bring through something. But there's this movement now, it seems, as well, as of these sort of starseed individuals, and I think there's a lot of controversy about that. I'm not judging anyone, but I see a lot of content now of people doing light language and things of this nature. And I think that obviously was all born out of this, channeling culture that was happening back then. I mean, that's really when it started. Of course, you can go back to, spiritualism and and things that, you know, are much earlier than that, and seances and so forth. But I think that general idea of channeling, you know, ETs, UFOs, it really started pretty much around that time. And you've seen that influence now again with these sort of influencers who are channelers and what have you. So
Yeah. All of those, I don't know. I don't know what to think of that when I see it. I've seen a couple.
yeah.
I wanted to like ask you something about Greenberg, because there are pictures of Andrea Puharich in the same table as Greenberg, a couple at least. And back then was like the late 80s. Puharich was already a little bit on the older side.
Yeah.
Do you think they may have like talked about this at any point? Him
Who-
and Greenberg?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that they, well, what I know is this, you know, Puharich, you know, went to Mexico and in this was like the early 80s, in fact, is when he went there and lived there for a couple of years. But from what I was told, he spent time with Greenberg during that period. And I think it was Ida who had mentioned that there was a book or a manuscript or something of Greenberg's that had mentioned this as well. Yeah, that's right. It was that early 80s time that they were together. And I don't know. I mean, I think Ida had mentioned that there was something that they were both interested in channeling, and they talked about it. I mean, I don't know what they could have talked about, but the point is they were definitely together at that time. And I think it's pretty obvious that it's a strange coincidence that they both, I think Greenberg was right before Puharich. Greenberg disappears. I think it was like 2 months or less after, before Puharich was found dead. So that's something that I know we've talked about. And I don't know if other people know about that, but it's very strange considering they were colleagues, interested in the same stuff, spent time together. So that's a big question mark. And I've tried to dig more into that over the past few years. But
Yeah. And then Stargate ended also just a month later, I think, after
Yeah.
Puharich passed away. So that also should be noted.
Exactly. And they did the classic thing where when it ended, they put out all these articles in the newspaper and everything kind of saying, you know, waste of time, CIA program, waste money on, you know, stuff that never worked, and kind of disparaging the whole project. And it's kind of interesting because isn't there a theory that Greenberg was like captured and brought to like a, you know,
Yes.
I just read something this morning about all these disappearances that are going on, and that
There
might
are-
be happening
There
too.
are physical copies of the offers that many universities that were sponsored by three-letter agencies at the time sent Greenberg physically as offers to go and lecture at many of these universities. And he, according to reports, he always declined, but I suspect that may not have been the case. But yeah, that's that, like there are copies of that. His daughter holds them still.
Yeah, I just couldn't help but think about that because this morning I had read something about these disappearances happening now and how there's somebody is theorizing that it might be a situation where they're being taken to witness protection or some secret laboratory or something like that. But
Yes.
not sure.
By the way, before we go to the questions, because we're gonna get there, I
Mhm.
did want to talk a little bit about Pachita, just a little bit, because the last time we spoke, you hadn't released what you released about Pachita yet, and there is something that we're trying to get done with Ida Cuellar, the director of the Greenberg documentary, that is going to be on both of our channels as well. But Can you speak a little bit on that manuscript and what's the backstory behind it? What you found interesting about it?
Yeah, so again, in Puharich's archives, there's just tons and tons of material, and he studied and investigated Pachita a lot in this late 70s. And so this is on the Substack, the Cosmic Clock Substack, which you can find pretty easily, cosmicclock.net. But on there, I've posted those documents, and basically in his archives, there's this whole folder that was labeled Pachita, and it was just a lot of research and photographs. But I think what you're referencing specifically was there was this document in there that was labeled confidential, which, you know, I don't know why that was. It could have been serious. It could have just been his own way of bookkeeping. I don't know, but it clearly says confidential. And even the Manila package folder thing that it was in, it was clearly shipped somewhere because it was in this envelope. And even on that, it says confidential. But basically, it's this sort of detailed summary of his travels to Mexico to investigate her. He mentions, I mean, I'd have to bring it up to know exactly, but he mentions the names of a few doctors and a few military people who were involved with him at that time. And he sort of also outlines a further research trip, and he kind of budgets out like what that would cost and what it would look like. And at the end of it, what's really interesting is he's sort of suggesting that he would bring the whole goal of this is he would bring Pachita back to the United States and start this full-blown research program into healing and shamanistic healing, psychic healing, and that it would be at such and such a university, and these people would be involved, and this would be the head of this and that. And he outlines all of that. And it's interesting to think like that was the goal of this, was to bring her back to kind of be studied in a legitimate, not unlike the Uri Geller SRI stuff, which he did. He brought him back. He was the one who set him up at SRI before Put Off any of these guys were involved. So he was kind of doing the same thing with Pachita, where he was imagining she would come back and be part of this full-blown research program at a legitimate university. And of course that never happened, and we can speculate why. But so that's what that document is. And it's cool because, yeah, he names some people in there that I had never heard of. I believe he names like one military guy in there as well. So it's very secretive. Again, it's labeled confidential. So who's to say that he wasn't doing this on behalf of someone else, some other entity, some other potentially, you know, government intelligence situation. I don't know. But again, that was the thing with him, is he always seemed to be able to kind of go wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And I suspect that he was kind of funded by intelligence during that time. So
Yeah. Kind of sounds like it. Yeah. And something that I do think that came across in your film when I watched it was how much he struggled with that in his later years, right?
Yeah. I think that he I mean, I don't want, I keep saying I don't want to ruin the film, but yeah, it does get into that. And let's just say it really explains the struggle and the problems he had with the government, basically, which was a result of his very deep connections from way back in the 50s.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna try and do something with that, if possible, with Ida as well, so we can talk about it, because Ida is very much into this. He was the one who made that Jacobo Greenberg documentary. Unfortunately, Ida right now is recording. He's in production with HBO because he's doing a documentary about a very famous singer from here, from my country, and
Oh,
he's
wow.
like really preoccupied right now. So that's why he very rarely responds to messages. I'm sure gonna send him this little exchange we had here about him, so we can
Yeah.
maybe try and find some time so we can do this, because I think it's very exciting. Thank you for
Yeah.
revealing what you did on that. I didn't know
Yeah.
about those plans per se. I haven't finished reading the whole thing myself. So,
Yeah.
so let's move on to the questions for Greg. Anybody who has a question about all of this, please put them in all caps, and I'll just start trying to single them out if they're in all caps. It's a lot of comments, so please bear with me. So yeah, this even though I've done like 17 live streams, I think I've done really like 10, because all those others, Clint is like managing the whole thing from the night shift because it's the Doomer Friday. But
Mhm.
it gets a little bit difficult sometimes because there's a lot of comments. And let's see if we can pull up the first ones right here. This is just a comment, really, not a question, but just listen to Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. It's crazy that he talks about as far as traveling to other places out of body and spiritually. Sorry for plugging. No worries. What do you think about Robert Monroe? Have you looked into his work?
Well, in fact, him and Puharich were really close colleagues, like before the whole Monroe Institute and before the what do they call it? The sounds and all that stuff that he's doing. They were colleagues in like the 60s, the early 60s. And I haven't tried, what is that called? The thing that the tapes, the Monroe tapes. I don't know. Can someone help me out
The
here?
Gateway tapes?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
done it. I've heard the original tapes that you can follow exist out there, but I don't really know a lot about that because I haven't really experienced it. But he certainly seems like an interesting guy. I mean, I know people who've gone to the Monroe Institute for workshops and stuff like that, but I should look more into him. No. Gateway
All right.
experience. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
binary beats and all that stuff.
Binaural beats. Yeah.
I haven't done it.
There is an experiment that Grimberg did with binaural beats, and he found that the people who had the most interhemispherical coherence, he called it, the one who had the most coherence, you put them in a room with somebody who didn't, and the one who had it made the other one reach that coherence, which was it kind of talks about this entanglement of minds, right? That sometimes it happens, like when somebody learns a new or discovers something new, it doesn't take long for the rest of the world, without even knowing this person, to come up with other discoveries that are similar or the same. And this has happened forever in humanity. It's a really strange phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to look into that. I mean, again, I feel like that's sort of making a comeback or something, the Gateway experience thing.
Yeah. This is one. Another dude on another podcast just recently admitted that Stargate did not stop as we've all known. It just changed names. I wish I could cite it, but I'm not that good. You're talking about Dr. Dean Radin, and he did talk about it recently in a couple of podcasts. He was also, actually, fun fact, between I think 86 and 87, or 85 and 86, he was part of Stargate too. And this is not a too much of a known fact. He's mentioned it in podcasts, but it kind of goes under the radar. But he was, so he should know about this because he was part of it.
Yeah, he's sort of out there a lot. recently.
Yep.
I've been seeing. I didn't know that though. I mean, I've certainly heard that rumor. I think like people say the same thing about MK Ultra, like it never ended. And I mean, why would it? You know?
Yeah, if it
So,
works.
yeah, and I think Stargate too. It's like it's so obvious when you're getting this onslaught of media that it was a waste of time, it was a waste of money. It's like we're talking New York Times, big outlets. And so we will just be led to think, okay, that's probably what the result was. And why wouldn't it continue? I mean, I think it's obvious. I haven't seen anything you know evidence wise that I can point to, but I think an interesting comment on that is actually, and I don't think I've ever told this before, but so there's people know that Puharich brought Geller from Israel to the US and he brought him to SRI. And apparently that SRI program also ended at a certain year, that particular part of it with Geller. And I think it was with, what's his name as well, Ingo Swann. But I had this discovery in his archives. It was basically, I don't know what you would call it. It was sort of like a pay stub, but it was some sort of like obviously official paperwork from SRI to Lab 9. And it was actually stating that they were sending money. And it's funny because it was not a lot. It was like $3,000 or something. But at the time in 74, if you do the math, it would have been like, I think it was more like 15 grand to, it was a lot then. And they were sending that. It was directly from SRI to Lab 9. And then there was some other mention. I can't bring it up now because I don't have but it was interesting because a lot of people, and even Hal Puthoff kind of suggests that, Puharich was not really a part of that and he was crazy. And maybe we saw him once there, but he wasn't really involved. But I mean, this is something he kept in his record. So obviously it was important to some degree because he kept this paperwork that clearly shows there's money being transferred from Stanford Research Institute to his lab. My point is, I feel like that would suggest this theory that a lot of people have, where there were these sort of hubs that were operating under SRI and under these, and specifically that Stargate program, that were discrete or that weren't directly connected to the actual lab and the actual experiments. Annie Jacobson, the author who is in my film, she suggests something similar, that, of course, if you're trying to do experiments, space kids and so forth, you're not going to want to bring them into this very official government laboratory, and it's off-putting. And so if you have this guy who has this again 70s living off the land hippie kind of vibes going on, it's much easier to get people to want to go there and want to spend time there and ultimately be part of experiments. So the point is, I believe at least at some point, Lab 9 was operating officially or unofficially rather with SRI during that time, specifically trying to do remote viewing with kids. And this gets into the whole GATE program stuff. But if you look at it, the SRI stuff is very specifically Geller, Ingo Swann, and that other guy, Pat Price. And I think, I've heard a rumor that, again, going back to what I just said, they wanted and believed that kids were more open and more susceptible to remote viewing, but it was too difficult to get them into that research laboratory. And so they used Lab 9 as a sort of hub for that research.
Yeah,
I can't prove that besides the pay stub or whatever it is that clearly is some sort of official document that links SRI with Lab 9 at that during those exact years that Stargate was happening. So That's
Let's continue with this question. That's a very interesting. I hadn't heard about that. Sorry about
Yeah.
the dog barking. There's somebody outside, so I can't really stop it. Okay, so from CFCBRM, have you checked out the telepathy tapes? Feel like it's following its heart's footsteps with telepathy, psychedelics, and UFO entryism.
I can we pause for 2 seconds? I got to give someone a key.
Yeah, no worries.
Give me
We
just
can.
2 seconds.
I can keep talking. This is a live, so we can't
Yeah.
pause it really. But yeah,
Well, I
go
know.
ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry. 1 second.
Go ahead. No worries. So about the telepathy tapes, the movie is coming out. I think next month, if I'm not mistaken. But there were already screenings of the film by Kai Dickens. I haven't talked to Kai in a little while. I did have her on the show, but yeah, Puharich does have a book about telepathy where he talks about this. And yeah, there are many different similarities between the work that Kai Dickens has been doing and also a lot of the work that, for example, Dr. Dean Radin has been doing. So yeah, I have actually Kai Dickens. I had her on the show. I had Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, and I also had Dr. Julia Mossrich, who is also part of some of the experiments from the film. Of the telepathy tapes. Have you checked out the tapes by any chance, Greg?
Well, I've listened, of course, to the show, which I thought was really good. I mean, I know that there's been like crazy controversy, and there's some people out there on X who are very opinionated about the whole thing. But no, I think it's interesting. I mean, she mentions Puharich a ton. I think it's the second episode or something, but she references his early research into telepathy. Yep. And I think, no, I mean, obviously it's similar in the sense that of course, like the people that Puharich worked with, the space kids, were not autistic. So that's, a difference, of course, but there is this idea that it's younger people who are better at this ability or have this ability, and
more susceptible, right?
Yeah. And so I think there's an interesting thing going on with this whole idea of the hill that they call it in the telepathy tapes, where it's this sort of mental area where they can all sort of meet and communicate. That's really interesting because with Puharich, there was something pretty similar where he did what was called a mind link, where basically it was a group of 20-something people that eventually got whittled down to 12 people because they couldn't really like handle the intensity of the experiment because they had to spend like a week in silence and sort of not talking and a ton of meditating. But essentially this experiment called a mind link was very similar to this idea of the hill, where they would all sit in meditation and they were able to sort of link up mentally with other people in the group. And they figured it worked because the only thing they could have on them during this was a little notepad, and they would write down. So let's say you and I were doing this, it was a mind link. You would be sort of sending me some sort of message or word or thought, and I would write it down. And then you would show what you wrote down, see if it matched up, that kind of stuff. And allegedly, there were a lot of accurate hits, or whatever you want to call it, during this mind link experiment, which again, 77, everything seemed to happen around that time frame. But so those are the similarities I see. And I think it's very interesting to see what happens with this telepathy tapes film, which I played a small part in, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
Early on. And so, yeah, I just talked a lot with Kai and sort of gave her some names and people to talk to and things like that. And nice. So I'm really interested because let's see if this film can sort of prove all of the doubts and all of the controversy that seems to be surrounding the telepathy tapes. I mean, I hope it does. I think a lot of people kind of, I was talking to Danny Jones about it because he had that woman on, the mother of one of the
Yeah,
kids.
Dalia.
Yeah,
Dalia.
everybody sort of claims was cheating. And again, I don't really know. All I know is that I thought the podcast was really, really moving, and I enjoyed it. And I think it would be really cool if this film came out and kind of proved people wrong. So I can only hope that that's kind of what happens.
Yeah, me too. Plus, Kai is a really nice person, so I think she deserves whatever is coming her way. She's really nice. So,
and I know she had mentioned, like, I never really followed up, but there was some mention, like, if I'm not mistaken, like one of the kids got contacted by the government, or if there was something that went down, or the CIA or something. I don't recall what happened.
Kai is on record saying that somebody from the CIA directly just told her that they were running an investigation, and they were very open about it. They didn't go like overtly, covertly like that. You know, they were like, okay, I'm from the agency. This is what we're doing. Nothing. We're not doing anything wrong. And she was like, they're really friendly. Like, but yeah, they were conducting an investigation about this. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So let me show you one for you right here. It says Greg from Kevin is an alien. Hey, Kevin is an alien. Do you have a gut feeling that there might be some premonitions or future predictions, forecasts in the tapes you have? You mentioned maybe back testing them.
Well, you know, I don't know. That's why I brought it up. And that's why I think it'd be an interesting task to, you know, do, because there's so much material that there could very well be. I don't know sitting here at this moment, because I mean, yeah, I've listened to a lot of it, but it's so much. But I think it'd be a cool experiment to transcribe all this stuff and kind of see if there's dots to connect. Yeah.
Do you not think, and as a follow-up to this, because I thought about asking you this before, this whole premonition thing that has been prevalent for millennia, we could say that. There's always somebody who's like trying to predict stuff. Do you think this has anything potentially to do with time manipulation or time travel? And like humans, biology might be tied to time and space in some way that we haven't discovered yet?
It certainly could be. I think it makes sense to assume that predicting something that will be happening in the future could somehow be tied to that. But I don't know. It's a bit of a scientific question for me to think about, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But I think so. I mean, at the end of Buharic's life, he got very deep. Some might say a little bit too, you know, off the deep end with theories about how this all worked. And his big thing was like trying to come up with a theory of how this all worked, and almost like rewriting physics, you know, to kind of incorporate psi phenomena. And he was very much into doing that. And who knows, maybe he would have achieved that if he hadn't died. But yeah, that was his big thing, and he was kind of convinced. And a lot of the channeled information that he was getting, he was sort of claiming that in that information, it was describing how things worked. It was getting into the mechanisms behind it all. So his last kind of thing was trying to, you know, rewrite the book, so to speak, on like, this is how psychic phenomena and all this stuff can be explained. And that's another project of trying to get some of that stuff out, because as much of it, there's a lot of it that's kind of, you know, scribbling notebook kind of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that's very legitimate essays. And so it's something else that should probably be out there that I'll eventually work on getting out there. So
Thank you, man. That's
yeah.
pretty cool. Let me show you another one, and this is an interesting question, I think. Regarding your telepathy tapes, how do you balance belief versus disbelief as related to new ideas?
How do you? I don't really think I understand what he's saying here.
Well,
Really?
when a new idea arrives to your head or in front of your eyes, how do you balance whether it's a believable enough idea that is real versus something that seems like it could not be real? How do you balance that? Your
Like
discernment, I would guess.
me personally, or do you like just
Yeah.
like in general?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I sort of. I mean, I kind of like, I hate to resort back to Buharich all the time, but a lot of this stuff for me, it's like he clearly was somebody who was really intelligent, extremely intelligent. And so if someone like that is explaining, this is how this works, this is why it happens, this is, I tend to kind of say, well, this they clearly seem to know what they're talking about, which sort of results in me believing that person and believing what they're saying. On the other end, if it's somebody like we were talking about earlier, this new wave of sort of light worker, channeler type people, if they're kind of saying something, I would probably tend to be a bit more on the other end of it and not believe or take in as much. So I guess to me, it kind of comes down to like who the information is coming from. And is it somebody that I, personally sort of trust or feel comfortable with what they're saying? I mean, it's kind of like, to be honest, to give an example, like Jesse Michaels is someone who, I mean, is clearly like so intelligent within the way that he's able to interact and interview some of these people he has on. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that. So it's like, a lot of times stuff coming from him and his channel and the people he's talking to are things that I probably tend to believe, because again, it's all from who it's coming, who it's coming from. So
Yeah, it's also, for example, when he had this guy who saw the tall whites, I don't remember his name, but he was very clear at the beginning, Jesse, that he didn't believe this guy, but
yeah,
he's like very well known in these circles, and he wanted to talk to him just to get the story out. And there's also sometimes when he's like in the middle of an interview and a follow-up question comes up and it's skeptical. That surprises me from somebody like him, because you would think that he's like a full-on believer on everything that's going on, but
yeah.
no, he's presenting you the story first, and he always gets to ask really skeptical questions, I've seen, and I always value that also quite a bit.
Yeah, I haven't watched the Lazar one yet, but the first thing I saw was him sort of talking with him about the whole MIT story, and I thought, wow, that's cool, because nobody seems to really like ask that handful of questions that people seem to think like discredit him, and like the first thing I see is him asking something about that. So I'm excited to watch that for sure.
Yeah, and another note on this though is that I, for example, who before I started looking into this, I had a bunch of experiences when I was not like aware that the whole phenomena aspect is a real thing, And I went through a lot of experiences with psychedelics, and even when I was a teenager, when I was still not even smoking cigarettes or anything like that, where now it's all in a different context, and I don't know, it just hits different. For the longest time, I thought I was just either hallucinating or it didn't really happen. It was something from my imagination. But then, as I started doing a little bit more research into this, I was like, okay, so there's a possibility that even though I thought something that happened to me may have been a dream, it may have been something more than just a dream,
Mm-hmm.
And that comes with just keeping an open mind and being fully aware that your whole ontology may change with just a little thing that you see or just a little detail. And I think that is very important. I think that it's okay to be skeptical, but you can't be like a full-on denialist of something that you don't even know about fully. You have to know the whole data. I always scoff at people that criticize somebody, like, for example, Dr. Jacques Vallée or John Keel's work. And it's like, have you read any of his work? No. Then what the fuck are you doing commenting on it? Like, you know? Yeah.
I try to stay away from a lot of the discourse on X with a lot of this stuff, but I do find it funny, like that guy Mick West and some of the other guys who are the sort of classic debunkers of all things. But I'm curious to know, and maybe I'll make a post about it. I doubt they would see it or respond, but like, have they had any experience, or do they know anyone that they trust that has an experience?
I've always wanted to ask that to any of them. There's one who works for the New York Post, Stephen Greenstreet. He saw one of these black triangles. He saw one of these black triangles when he was younger. And there's this interview that I love watching because this guy, Tim Phillips from Arrow, is talking to him about black triangles. And he confirmed that they don't know what the black triangles are, that they're really curious about them. And you can see Greenstreet's face go like, what? And it's really funny. It was like, oh, that was gold.
Yeah. I mean, he's the other guy I was thinking of, where it's like, to be honest, I don't really quite get like I don't get his like thing, you know. It's like, okay, are you into this stuff or are you not into it? I don't. Because it's like he's sort of in the space, but everything is about debunking and pointing fingers and stuff. But I don't know. I have nothing against these people, but that was always my question, is like, I wonder if they have had or know anyone they trust who have had some experience and how they would approach that, because it just seems like it's constant attacking of others. And I don't know. It's
there's another question for you here, a technical one. Greg, if you have used AI for your research, has the AI shocked you or unnerved you in any answers? If so, what AI are you using?
Not really. I mean, I've used it to transcribe stuff. I've used ChatGPT to transcribe long audio files and stuff. But yeah, sometimes I've gotten into these, I'm sure a lot of people do, these deep philosophical conversations about, I have about all this stuff. And, you know, every now and again, I will kind of get into a thing like, well, the 9 said this, and how does this relate, and so forth. I mean, I can't pinpoint something exactly, but it is kind of like strange to sit there talking to an AI about something like the 9 or and all this. Yeah. But I've gotten into these deep conversations with it, like doing research. Well, so yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I have used AI for research, and it's kind of a lot like trying to put pieces together. Like, I know such and such was working at such and such a place at this time, and what would have been going on at that time, and is there someone of importance who would have been involved at this place at that time, you know, stuff like that. And obviously it's helpful because it spits things out pretty quickly. So I've used it in that sense, actually quite a bit in that type of research. You know, or again, for specifically like the Pachita thing I was talking about, I don't know what this guy's name is that he mentioned. So you go there, you go, who is this person? What significance do they have to this, and that kind of stuff? I use it, you know.
Yeah, and you can tell pretty quickly when the AI is like agreeing with you a little too much. Have you had that happen to you when you're like conversing with it?
Yeah, in fact, I kind of like I read this article recently about how it's always been sort of programmed to be that way. And we're just kind of now realizing, and that happened to me in real time because I read that article and I'm like, wait a second, I feel like every time I use this, yeah, it's constantly agreeing, it's constantly, and it's funny too, because I've recently done the kind of thing where I'll ask a question and I'll say like, be very blunt, be realistic, don't be biased, don't sugarcoat this, and it's still kind of does, as much as you even try to direct it to not do that.
Yep.
But I know
Yeah.
I've seen that for sure. I mean, pretty much anything you get into with it, it's always sort of favoring what I think it hopes that you want, and it's strange. It's very strange. But
Yeah. I see a comment here. Talk to people, not AI. Ain't that the truth?
well, what's weird is like there's a company called Wondery, which is a pretty big podcast company. They produce all sorts of big podcasts, and they started a whole wing of their company that's specifically doing a slate of AI podcasts. So it's taking topics like, news, sports, true crime, whatever the big hot podcast topics are, and it's all AI. The host is a completely generated AI person, and this because they've seen statistically, apparently, that people, and that's the big worry about AI. And for me, that's the big thing I always think about is like, okay, apparently people have just accepted, like, we don't really care if this was made by a real person. We just want to listen to it. And we don't care if this sports announcer is real. We just want the update. And so they've picked up on that. And anyone could look this up. This is Wondery. It's one of the biggest, if not like the biggest podcast production company. And they're doing a whole new wing of their company where it's just these AI generated shows. And it's really kind of bizarre and scary, because to me, it's like once we've accepted and are willing to just say, oh, I'll listen to this, completely AI generated thing willingly. I mean, that's when I think the conversation gets real about people losing jobs and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not someone personally who would be interested in listening to that. But apparently there are a lot of people who are. So that's a bit concerning, I suppose.
It is. Okay, so with almost at 2 hours, I want to thank absolutely everybody who is part of the chat right now. Heiser Sose, Justin, Mama Chola, Nick, all of you guys, thank you so much for your time. And I want to thank you, Greg, for the wonderful channel that you have and for allowing people to listen to these tapes raw like that. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, look, man, thank you. You've been a huge help. I've told you this a million times to me, trying to do all this stuff. So, I mean, I know it gets thrown around a lot, but I really can't thank you enough. So I appreciate that a lot.
It's my pleasure, man. It's my pleasure.
It's always good talking to you.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. And let's plan that thing with Ida as well, because I think that one's gonna be big. All about Pachita.
Hey, I mean, I'll shoot him a text after this. Maybe he'll.
Yeah, we'll shoot him the whole live too, so he can watch it and get in the mood or something.
I didn't know he's working on that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's it's pretty hectic for him, so I that's why I don't really bother him that much. But yeah, where can people find you? Just the Cosmic Clock everywhere online?
Yeah, again, the trailer for the Puharch film's coming out in a few weeks, or maybe even like a week. But yeah, mostly the Cosmic Clock is where I'm going to be putting out things, be more active, and hopefully putting up more videos and seeing things like that. So yeah, that's really it. And then the Substack is where, like you mentioned the Pachita thing earlier, like that's where I'm posting a lot of just like raw stuff, documents, and things like that, because I've concluded it's really like the only place that's easiest to just dump stuff like that. So
Yep,
Substack.
it is.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna start posting stuff on my Substack as well, but I gotta rebrand it and all that. It was just my name.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. No, it's a good resource. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So you guys know what to do. Thank you for following. This is gonna stay for posterity. If you want to listen to the tapes, go to either Greg's channel or mine, and you can listen to the whole one uninterrupted and with no voices over it. So you guys can check out the whole content. Thank you
Yeah.
again, everybody, the mods, everyone, and have a great day. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive, like my man Greg over here. Take
See you,
care,
man.
Greg.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.